Hi, this is Tim Worth of Moriel Radio here today with a brand new message from James Jacob Prasch of Moriel Ministries. Jacob, good morning or good afternoon, and what's the message for today?
Greetings in Jesus from England. I received an email question from South Africa today from Cape Town. I'll read it as follows. My name is Fato from Cape Town, South Africa. I want to know at what point does God consider a couple married? Is it after a wedding ceremony has been conducted, where the couple has exchanged vows, or is it when the couple is legally married? I'm asking this in light of the African tradition of paying lobola, where the groom is expected to pay a certain amount determined by the bride's family to the woman's parents in order to take the woman as his wife. Once lobola is paid, the couple is then considered to be married, regardless of whether or not they have been through home affairs to get legally married. The Bible, in my knowledge, is not very clear in this matter. What should happen in situations where governments make it difficult for couples to get married legally? I mean, in some countries, it's difficult for locals to get married to foreign nationals. Anticipating your response, many thanks, Tato. Well, I experienced complications like this in my own life. It is an actual fact that I, James Jacob Prasch, have been married 3 times. But I have been married 3 times to the same woman, to the same wife. In Israel, the rabbis make things very complicated for Jews who believe in Jesus. They control the ministry of internal issues concerning marriage, registry, citizenship, etc., and they control the rabbinutes. They make it very, very difficult for believing Jews legally and in any other way they possibly can, bureaucratically. So I had to marry my wife legally outside of Israel and a marriage contract in another country outside of Israel. Then, unsaved Jewish relatives would not come to what they considered to be a Christian wedding, a messianic wedding, where Yeshua, Jesus, was preached. So I made a deal with my wife's parents. I'll go to a secular Jewish wedding for your friends and relatives if you come to our messianic wedding with Jewish believers. So I did a second wedding for unsaved relatives. But then I did a third one with believers. And if my mother had her way, there would have been a 4th one in New York. But I declined. In any event, I've been married 3 times to the same woman over a 6-week period. I wasn't sure if sex would have been a sin or not, so we didn't do anything until after we were married for the 3rd time, with the blessings of the congregation and of the Lord, more importantly. Governments and countries can complicate marriage, as Tato rightly says, Israel being one example. Jewish believers have gone to Cyprus and all sorts of things. Why did I consider our wedding to be the one that we did with believers in a Messianic fellowship in Galilee? It is because then we made the commitment to Christ. Plato uses the term, the exchanging of vows. We exchange vows. This is a wrong concept for believers. We do not exchange vows and make vows with each other merely. Both the bride and the bridegroom make a vow to God. It is what God has joined together. It's not so much a question of we made a vow to each other. No, we both made a vow to God. It's what God has joined together. Now, in biblical times, there were 3 phases of a marriage, of a joining in holy wedlock: consecration, convocation, and consummation. This is the background of such gospel passages as Matthew 23 and Matthew 19, the parable of the wedding, etc. And also, I go and prepare a place for you. Consecration was betrothal or engagement, except that it was legally binding, as it may be in some American states, breach of contract. Once you were betrothed, you had to be monogamous, and you were legally obliged to marry that woman. In fact, you are already contractually married to her legally. It was the legal phase of the marriage. That's why Joseph would have had to give Mary a bill of divorce. Once you are betrothed, you are legally contracted to that person. You have a contract of marriage. Purely civil, but obligatory. Now this would apply to Christians. Let your yeas be nays and nays be nays. Breaking off an engagement is not something that should be done very lightly. You shouldn't get engaged to begin with. If you are not committed to marry that person and have a green light from the Lord to do so. Remember, it's what God has joined together. It's not like you get engaged and then you say the Lord told you not to. No. The Lord should have told you to do it to begin with. This breaking of engagements is something only reserved for where there's been infidelity or something of that nature by one of the two parties. So the first phase was consecration, betrothal, which was legally binding. It was engagement that constituted a contractual marriage, even though the actual ceremony did not take place. The bridegroom would go away for about a year, usually the springtime, and she knew he would be returning in the springtime. This is the background to the Song of Solomon, and its system maven, and its cultural setting. And what Jesus talked about, you see the signs of the times, the seasons changing. Well, the bridegroom would go away for about a year. The bride did not know the day or the hour he would return. She simply knew he had to return. By a matter of he was obligated to do so because the consecration had taken place. He was obligated to come back. And so Jesus has obligated to come back for his bride. We don't know the day or the hour. Now, in biblical times, the bridegroom always came in the night. Always came in the night. Hence, we see that Jesus is coming like a thief in the night. Remembering, in biblical typology, the night is a figure for the period of darkness and tribulation at the end of the age, the Great Tribulation. Watchman, watchman, how far is the night? Is he coming in the second watch of the night or the third? Work while you have the light, for night will come, no man can work. He's coming like a thief in the night. And the Song of Solomon, the bridegroom comes for his bride in the night. Matthew 23, the bridegroom comes in the night. Jesus will come during the tribulation for his bride. That is the marriage supper of the Lamb. The second phase, the convocation. The first phase, consecration, betrothal. Second phase, convocation, the nuptial, where there must be witnesses. Now, in the Song of Solomon, the witnesses are called in Hebrew, Hatzevaot HaShamayim. The hosts of heaven are the witnesses to the marriage supper of the Lamb. It is an open declaration. That is the nuptial ceremony, as it were. That is the nuptial ceremony. Consecration, convocation. The third is consummation. So the first is the legal phase. The second is the ritual phase. And the third is the biological phase. For a Jewish wedding to have been legal in the first century, in the second temple period in the time of Jesus, all three phases were necessary. Betrothal, nuptial, and as it were, what we would call honeymoon. Consecration, convocation, and consummation. If the Roman Catholic doctrine that Mary was kept a perpetual virgin by Joseph is true, it would mean that the marriage of Mary and Joseph was not legally legitimate or culturally or religiously legitimate in the culture and time in which they lived. This Roman Catholic lie is completely dishonoring to Joseph and Mary and to Jesus. To suggest that his parents were not properly wed is an outrage and a disgrace. I don't think most Catholics are intentionally trying to insult Mary and Joseph and Jesus, but the doctrine of the perpetual virginity of Mary is an absolute insult to Mary and to Joseph and to Jesus. All three phases were necessary. After Jesus was born, Joseph knew her, according to Matthew. Gnosko. He knew her not intimately, sexually, until Jesus was born. There were all three phases. Now, culture to culture, these three phases may vary. They may vary legally, they may vary culturally in different tribal cultures. But first, there must be a consecration. You know God wants you to marry this person. At that point, your relationship becomes monogamous. Second, there must be convocation, a public declaration of being joined together in holy wedlock. Third is consummation. All three are required in a normal wedding. Now, I accept the fact there could be a geriatric romance of two people in their 80s who can't quite consummate the marriage. God bless them anyway. The Lord understands. But I'm speaking here under normal conditions. Consecration, convocation, and consummation. Let us go further. Jesus said, what God has joined together. When does the marriage become a marriage in the eyes of God? In the eyes of states, it's when you make the contract or sign the registry. In the eyes of society, it is when you walk down the aisle and the preacher says, I now pronounce you man and wife, or whatever happens, or you stand under the huppah in a Jewish wedding. In certain tribal cultures, it's when the marriage is consummated. But when in the eyes of God, the two people become one. Not when they exchange vows. The vows are not per se exchanged. That's a wrong concept. But when they both make a vow to God, the husband makes a vow to God, I take this woman unto myself as Christ takes the church unto himself. The husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. And the wife takes that vow, I will love, honor, and cherish and obey this man as my head in Christ, as the church is under the headship of Christ. The bride makes a vow to God, the husband makes a vow to God. They make a promise to each other. But the vows are not exchanged. The vows are something you can only make to God. A vow, scripturally, can only be made to God. They both make the vow to God. Hence, a Christian marriage is never based on so-called vows that a husband and wife make to each other. It's based on the vow they've each made jointly to God. Moreover, it's not until love do you part. God's love never fails. Marriage, in its permanency, does not depend on human love. It depends on agape, God's love, and it never fails. It's the love of Jesus. It's the love of God that keeps the couple together. No matter how much they're in love with each other in any human sense of the word. And it's good if they are, but it's not good enough. If you're in love with your wife, if you're in love with your husband after 50 years of marriage, God bless you. That's good, but it's not good enough. It's not your love for him or his love for her that's going to keep that marriage alive. It's the love of God in and through Christ. It is the same love that Christ has for the church. When does the marriage become a marriage in God's eyes? When you make the vow to God. Now, having said that, Christians still should endeavor to comply with the cultural norms and the laws of the societies and nations in which they live. They should comply with the laws and the customs of the society and the nations in which they live. It's part of our testimony. Nonetheless, it's what God has joined together. That is holy matrimony. That is holy wedlock. Again, I've been in a very complicated situation in my own life in Israel because of the rabbis and because of unsaved Jewish family. I've been in this situation myself, and I've spent a lot of time in tribal Africa. I understand the cultural complications, including things like Ebola. Now, in KwaZulu-Natal, I knew a case where there was a lady who was very attractive, but because she didn't come from an affluent family, In the tribal culture, her lobola was only 9 cows. They paid in cows. But there was another young woman who was not all that attractive, frankly, but her brother was a tribal chieftain in the village. Her lobola was 14 cows. The good-looking young lady was worth less than the less attractive one, simply because of social status based on tribalism. God does not care about any of that stuff. What God cares about is, did he join these two together? Is this the man God has for you? Is this the woman has for you? Has God joined them together? The lobola was paid on the cross. Marriage was corrupted by sin right from the beginning. But Christ bought it back with his own blood. That's the lobola. He redeems marriage. He redeems the family. He redeems God's original plan for man, for those who turn to Christ and have had second birth. What's urgently important is believers should not marry non-believers. For a Christian to marry an unsaved person, that is like standing in a puddle and putting your finger in an electrical socket. It's asking for trouble. There are, however, circumstances where you have backsliders, or where you have somebody who becomes a Christian during the engagement after they've already gotten their unsaved girlfriend pregnant. Cases like that are more complicated, where you have to put the good of the child first. But the number one priority in such a situation is seeing your fiancé get saved. They need to get saved. That's more important than anything. The idea is their salvation. God wants a saved husband and a saved wife. And he wants children born into that kind of marriage, where the children will come to know the Lord at an early age. So remember, consecration, betrothal. Convocation, nuptial. Consummation, honeymoon. The legal, the ritual, and the biological. Each phase is important. But once you make the vow to God, at that point, in the eyes of God and in the eyes of the church, you are married. This is Jacob Prasch, coming to you from England, Moriel Ministries. God bless.
And a wonderful message from James Jacob Prasch of Moriel Ministries. And this is Moriel Radio saying God bless you and have a wonderful day.